Well, hello. I think we're live. Live with When Bad Things Happen to Good People. I'm about to give my... Oh, you've got a caller. Who we got calling in here? Hello, Oren.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Were you not able to come into the room until I went live?
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure how that would work. That's
Well, I
dumb.
think I'm just part of the general public at this point, right? I'm not a co-host. I don't think you get any special privileges as a co-host anyway.
Yeah, I was hoping what would happen is that people would be able to come in if they were using the app and join the chat, but the broadcast wouldn't be going out live, which is why I didn't actually start the live broadcast early. But I guess next time I will do that because it seems like nobody could get in um, until I went live, and now we're live and nobody's here. But that's okay. um, do you want to wait a couple minutes to see if people come in before we press on?
Yeah.
We'll do the typical. How you been? How you been? What's new with you?
How how you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing? Yeah, I went to get the beer and my card was declined.
Oh no, that's not good. So did you manage to find a way to get some beer or not?
Yeah, I had like $50 worth of toonies in the car.
Oh, that's a good time. I'm sure
So I
they
just busted
appreciated
that
that.
out. Oh yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes they need toonies, right? They need
Yeah,
change or
that's true.
whatever.
That's true.
We could all use a little change.
It's better to have a bunch of toonies and not need them than to need them and not have them, right? Isn't that the general wisdom?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, are we only allowed to see who's listening on Podbean, or would if somebody's listening on, like, if there's somebody's not really in the room chatting with us, but they're say on the website listening to the live stream, would
Yeah,
we know that?
that is an excellent question, and I don't know. Let's do a little experiment to find out. Um, I'm going to try listening in a different window just on the web and see if that increases or changes the count for the number of people listening. Uh, uh,
Okay, it says live to total 6.
oh, does
So
it?
I think some people might be listening.
I'm only seeing. Oh, where do you see those numbers?
So I see on your little banner here at the top on the app, it says banned things, the autobiography of Mal, dot, 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 and then live to total 6.
Okay, I only see. I've got on online two and total two, but I guess that's about who's listening here. All right. Well, it seems like we have people listening, which is exciting.
That is
Thanks for coming,
exciting.
people. One of the great things I think about podcasts is that you're able to listen to them kind of whenever you want. Um, you download it on your phone and it's sitting there on your phone, and maybe you're gonna do some dishes, so you think, hey, this is a good time to listen to a podcast, or you're gonna drive to work and you think, hey, this is a good time to listen to a podcast, or you're lying in bed unable to get up because you're overwhelmed with existential dread because it's 2020. That's a pretty good time to listen to a podcast too. But what we're doing here is, we're asking for people to come in and sit down with us on a particular time, um, which is not the normal way to consume a podcast. So if there are people listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out to come and hang with us today. It's super cool that you decided to do that and not um, do other things. Maybe you are lying in bed struggling with existential dread, and if that's the case, hopefully we can help you get through that. What kind of beer did you pick up today, Warren?
I got It's from Hoyne Brewing. It's called Helios.
Okay,
It's a golden lager, and it's actually pretty good.
sounds nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hoyne is on the island, Vancouver Island,
Mhm.
if I remember right.
I am having coffee with 40 Creek, Nanaimo Bar Irish cream. A little splash of that in there, so that's pretty tasty.
That sounds like really sweet.
I don't put too much in, so it doesn't get too sweet. But
Now, do you have
uh,
to get the sugar-free stuff, or?
no, I mean, if there was, I would, but I don't think there's any such thing as sugar-free Irish cream. There might be
Gotcha.
if I made it myself. Um,
Like bought whiskey and then bought some like Irish creamer and just like threw it in there.
yeah, well, I mean, like my parents made or used to make or still make homemade Irish cream every Christmas, and I
Oh,
imagine
really?
like when you do that, sugar is an ingredient, but if you were to swap sugar for stevia or something like that, you'd be able to make a fairly sugar-free version of it.
Oh, okay.
But no, I just have to make sure I don't drink too much of it. That's all. Um, all right, I think we're ready to start.
Yeah, okay.
So you're listening to When Bad Things Happen to Good People, a podcast about censorship and the arts. My name, because I haven't said it yet, is Todd Sullivan. He's Oren
And my
Barter,
name Yeah.
and today
And
we're doing our wrap up of the Autobiography of Malcolm X. Now let's have some theme music. Woo! That's cool. Um,
yay.
I guess before we start, we should note that the way we're doing this live broadcast is not at all like the way we would normally do a regular broadcast. So the audio may not be as good. Obviously, it's going to be unedited. There may be technical difficulties as we fumble through this. Because this is sort of, we've tested the platform of going live on Podbean, but we've never actually done a proper episode this way. There is something that I hope I can play with a little bit during this episode, which is the audio effects board that I have, so that like if someone says something really really bad, we can. Ooh, oh no! Everyone just booed. Or if I say something really smart, then the crowd can respond appropriately. That's not something we have in a regular podcast, but it may sneak in a little bit during this because it's fun. Before we get into the actual discussion, we do have some, I think, exciting announcements about what's coming up, because we've already sort of planned out what our next book is going to be. We've got. Well, let's start with what our next episode after this one is going to be, because we're not doing a new book right away. We're going to be covering a film. It's a Japanese film that was released in the year 2000, and it is called Battle Royale. That episode will be dropping on October 31st. It's actually going to be out a day earlier than normal. Normally, our episodes come out on Sunday. Battle Royale is going to come out on Saturday just because it's Halloween, and because it is kind of like the movie is kind of a slasher, gory, messy kind of film. Do you want to tease anything about? Oh, actually, we should mention who our co-host on that was. Oren, you want to tell us who co-hosted that with us?
Yeah, actually, an old friend of mine when I used to live in Kamloops, great musician, great guy, Dave Colemine, and a good friend of yours too,
Yeah,
which happened like 10 years after I met him. So, you know, good people stick together, I guess.
yeah. I was saying to my parents the other day how weird it was that we had each gotten to know and befriend Dave Colemine individually without any sort of overlap between you and I, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, he's a
And
great guy. He was a great co-host. I had a lot of fun in that episode. I was pretty hammered.
yeah, it was a fun discussion, and it was really neat having an extra voice in there and a different point of view. So hopefully we can have some more guests in the future. And also we brought him on in part because I've started a new podcast with him as well, called Mysteries and Madness. It's sort of a narrative, an improv narrative set in a 1940s noir detective story, combined with cosmic horror, Lovecraftian Cthulhu stuff. So our first story arc just finished. Our first 3-episode story arc is just finished. So if you would look up Mysteries and Madness, you can find that podcast out there. It's been a fun time. Yeah. And then following that, the next book we're going to cover is The Handmaid's Tale. Now, there's a few reasons that we decided to take on that one, but a big one is connected to the Supreme Court nomination in the U.S. right now, and the likely legitimate concern that with a packed conservative court in the U.S., it's going to make things a little challenging for women's reproductive rights, and the fact that this book from, I think, 1986, sort of tackled those issues, or some of those issues, in this kind of dystopian future, made it seem like not only an interesting choice, but also a topical one. And it is a book that has fairly regularly banned or challenged. It was the 29th most challenged book for the last decade, between 2010 and 2019. So it's still pissing people off.
You said it was the most challenged or one of the most challenged?
No, the 29th most.
Oh, 29th. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's up there, but not number one. I don't remember what number one is. I can look it up. We want to know what number one is.
And there's a TV series about this book now too.
Yes. And it's a 3-season TV series so far, as well as they made a movie in the late 80s as well. And I've not seen the movie, and I've not watched any of the TV series either.
Have you read the book before? Or is this your first time through? Okay.
And so part of the reason I was putting off watching the movie and watching the series is because I was hoping to eventually be able to read the book before watching those things, and I just always sort of put off reading the book. And now I have put myself into a corner where I have no choice, and I'm about halfway through the first batch of pages that we're going to be covering in the episode, and man, I'm enjoying it so far. It's really, 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 really well done.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too far into that book right now.
Yeah, no. I don't want to talk about it at all. But it's yeah. I can't wait to start talking about it. That's the thing. Right? And also, on top of the fact that it is fairly frequently challenged, and it is topical, and it does have a current TV series, it's Canadian. It's a Canadian book written by author Margaret Atwood. So we get to talk about a homegrown author, Canadian author. So
she's Canadian, but she wrote it in Germany, right?
I believe so.
Started it in Germany at least. Yeah.
But these writers, they're always like traveling around, getting into culture and experiencing things. And
how dare they?
How dare they?
They have a life. Oh man, I went to the liquor store to buy beer, and I had like spaghetti sauce on my shirt.
Oh no.
Well, that
would have been better if you just had just brought a whole plate of spaghetti with you. Eating your spaghetti behind your beer.
Oh, I had like a big spaghetti stain on my shirt, and I used my card, and it was declined. Wow, that was embarrassing.
That's a bad look all around. And then, starting with that first episode of The Handmaid's Tale, we are going to try shifting to a weekly release format. So it's actually going to come out 1 week, well, 8 days, because Battle Royale will come out on a Saturday. So it'll come out 8 days after Battle Royale. And then we are hopefully going to continue weekly from there. We might, depending on how well it goes, we might take 1 week off in between books as we change one book to another. But right now, the plan is to go to a weekly schedule. We're going to read shorter sections of books. When we were doing Malcolm X, we were reading about 150 pages per episode. Now we're going to read about 100 pages per episode. That gives us a little bit less to get through and hopefully a little bit less to talk about each episode. Because
I think that's good because I think the episode length, was a little long.
Yeah, once it got over an hour, we had like an hour 10, an hour 15.
Well, we had to split that one recording take into two, right?
Well, that was because that recording was almost 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
So shorter sections of the book, weekly release schedule, which we talked to a few of our listeners to see if they would think that was a good move. Everyone pretty much said yes. So we're going to give it a try. I'm excited.
You know who I'm missing right now? Who I want on here?
Who?
Dave. Dave, if you're listening, call in.
Yeah, Dave is supposed to be calling in today. He helped us test out the live broadcast earlier this week. And hopefully he'll show up. Hopefully he'll arrive. Should we, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we get into the book?
About the podcast or just in general?
Yeah, whatever.
I started a new job. I got 3 days in so far. That's really exciting. Totally different than anything else I've done before.
Yeah.
So, excited and happy about that. A job where I get to use my brain a little more than my body. So.
Yep. Yeah. Just, you can remind yourself that you have one in there.
I hope I do. I mean, I hit it a long time ago, and I'm hoping it'll come back out.
Yeah. Just wipe some of the dust off and attach some jumper cables and see if you can fire it up.
Yeah, exactly. No, other than that, let's get to her.
All right. So, what do you want to say? What do you got to say about the book?
I'm really, really glad that I read this book. I'm one of those people who tends to digest stories and information in documentary and movie format, and actually sitting down and reading a full book about this man's life was kind of life-changing for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was really it was a challenge for me. I'm a little embarrassed to say that. It's a challenge to get through a book. But there was times where I was like, I don't know if I can do this podcast. I don't know if, I don't know if I've got the right frame of mind or view to discuss this. But you kept pushing me. You kept like, hey man, like, it's okay if we have to, like, we had one late episode or a couple late episodes. I know you were really, really good about catering to my ridiculousness at times. But, after reading the book and then watching the movie and realizing how much I would have lost of the story if I had just watched the movie, not taking anything away from the film. It was a great film.
Mm-hmm.
I did really enjoy it, but the book just gave me so much more insight, and the speed at which the information that I was taking in, I was digesting it slower, thinking about it more, kind of reinvigorated my love for reading.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the book, fantastic, but aside from that, the just doing this podcast with you and getting through that first book was a great experience for me, and I'm so glad that you took me along for this ride. So, thank you.
Oh man, I'm so glad you came along. I think I was saying to you earlier that, especially the last couple of weeks, my mood has improved as a result, I think, of having really increased the amount of sort of creative energy and creative output that I have thanks to sort of multiple podcasts now. And as well, I've not read as much as an adult as I did when I was in like high school or earlier, because there weren't as many distractions then. Like video games weren't, they kind of sucked, right? And so I've been trying, especially in the last few years, to like force myself to read more and force myself to read more, because I'm so far off from how much I used to read. And so having this opportunity to sort of like, especially dig into a specific type of book. And again, I don't think I would have read this one otherwise. There might have been on the back of my mind as something that would be interesting and I should check it out one day. But the odds of my ever actually getting around to checking it out probably would have been pretty slim. But I am very glad that I did get a chance to read it, and especially against the backdrop of the Black Lives Matter protests in the U.S. and that sort of thing, because I think it really drives home how well, as we said multiple times throughout the previous podcasts, how little things have really changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to say, well, there's no, you don't get the white sheeted dudes burning crosses on your lawn anymore. And I guess for the most part, that's probably true. But removing that is not, like, if that's all that's changed, that's not a huge victory. Like, there is still so much racism,
Well,
like
and it's like,
systemic racism, and
yeah, and I think what might have happened over the years is that it just kind of went underground a little bit. It still existed. People just didn't talk about it as openly. They talked about it more in private, which is almost worse because then you
yeah,
don't get that discussion. You don't get that discourse, right?
yeah,
It's just like they're talking with people who are like-minded and reinforcing those beliefs amongst each other, um, which is, yeah, I think worse in a way. Um,
Dave was saying in the chat that linens have become increasingly expensive, and so maybe that's why we're not seeing as many Klansmen around anymore.
Actually, what the hell did I watch? Oh, I watched Fahrenheit 11/9. Did you guys watch that?
I have not seen that yet. No.
Okay, dude, it's actually really good. And at the end of that documentary, um, the guy that's actually in uh no, oh no. Was it that one? Was it
Mhm.
11/9? No, I watched The Black Klansman.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet either, but that one I really want to see.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Spike Lee as well. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think it was at the end of that one it showed uh like kind of these the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK kind of getting out in the public again more, like
Mhm.
doing what would you call it when people get together outside in a forum? There's a word for that. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah, gatherings or
Yeah, and that's scary to think that they're getting bold again, right? So,
yep. Well, I mean, it's a question of whether or not this book should be banned or should be challenged. I did check actually just a second ago. It's not on the list of most challenged books of the last decade, and I don't think this one has been challenged for a while. I feel like the controversy around this one would have been more attached to when it was first released and when Malcolm's call for Black society sort of stand up and even push back violently would have been a bit more shocking, and frightening, because the white society wouldn't have been used to it at that point. But to me, like, I actually think that rather than like challenge or ban this book needs to be part of the high school curriculum in the U.S. I think this book needs to be taught. I think
I
I
think
think
so.
students need to have access to this perspective and to this history, um, as a way of better understanding what's going on in the world around them right now.
I think that like maybe there's a couple of things that you wouldn't. I could understand you wouldn't want your teenage child to hear about, like the smoking of nutmeg, to get high. He gets quite into detail in illegal activities and things like that. I wouldn't say he glorifies them, but definitely it's hard to say like if that sort of stuff would seed, like plant a seed sort of thing. So I could see why people would be more than the racial aspect of it, but like that part of it I can understand. Um, I don't know if it would be possible to censor like portions of the book in the curriculum, get out
Oh, I
some
mean,
of
I
the
don't think
illegal
like I
aspects
mean,
of
for
it.
God's sakes, teenagers are playing Grand Theft Auto. Like listening to Malcolm X talk about his criminal life is not going to turn anyone to a life of crime. And I'm sure that regular teenagers have access to like enough pot that they don't need to worry about smoking nutmeg. Like, come on.
You
Dave
know what,
mentioned.
Dave?
Sorry.
I don't. Yeah, I was going to comment on that as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
wouldn't. I wouldn't say this book is pro-Muslim. I would say that it's a biography of a man of Muslim faith. I think there's a lot about it that speaks negatively of at least the black Muslim, the Nation of Islam, especially near the end. And yeah, I don't know if I'd say that this is really like pro-Muslim propaganda.
Yeah, and I kind of agree. Like, it's not really. It's a book about a person who happens to be a Muslim. It's not really a
Hmm.
book about Muslims, and in teaching it, I don't think you would be teaching. Like, I'm sure that there are books in high school curriculums where characters are Christian, um, where the book
Hmm.
is not necessarily a pro-Christian book. It's just the fact that that person is a Christian. There's a difference between teaching a religion and teaching a subject that is connected to a religion, if that makes sense. I think.
Hmm.
Um, but you're right. I think even as much as there are books that feature Christian characters and nobody seems to mind, I do think an attempt to put a book with a radical about a radical black historical character who is also a Muslim, there's going to be this book is going to be challenged a lot more often if somebody was trying to put it in the curriculum. So.
Yeah, sorry. Am I laughing? Like, I've got a headset on this time. I'm not speaking into my microphone, so I can't like back up when I'm laughing. Am I like blasting a lot of air at the microphone when I laugh, or
You
I'm kind
did
of
that
nervous about
last
that?
time. It did sound like you were
Okay.
like fighting back a sneeze or something, but it's not too bad.
Okay. Okay.
Um, where were we? About teaching the book in schools. I think, yeah. It's just. I wish more people had read this. I wish more people were reading it. I wish, and I'm sure that there are just as valuable um, perspectives from other writers. Like when we decided on this book, there were, I think, 3 or 4 different banned books by Black authors that we had considered before settling on this one. And so, there's a lot, and maybe next year when it comes to like Black History Month, we can grab another banned book from a Black author and open our eyes to other further perspectives, all the while trying to remember, we were concerned going into this book that we're a couple of privileged cis white guys who are going to be
Yeah.
filtering the story of this prominent Black historical figure, and whether or not that was a wise idea. So, and now we're about to be two cis white guys talking about women's reproductive rights. So we sort of like walking the razor's edge of controversy, I guess.
But you can't avoid this kind of information.
No,
That's yeah.
yeah, especially if
I
you're
was just
going
gonna
down the path
say,
of like reading a banned book or a challenge book, like there's always going to be some kind of controversy. So yeah.
well, even the controversy aside, just because we're privileged straight white men, uh,
Yeah.
we really need to hear this shit. You know what I mean? Like we
Well,
really
that's
need
a fair
to,
point too. We are the
you know,
probably the people who need to hear it the most because we do come from that position of privilege, and so we don't see the same struggle that Black American youth see, or that women fighting for their reproductive rights see. We're the guys who are just
Mhm.
like derp a derp a derp a derp. I can shoot
But
my
I could,
semen wherever I want, and it
sorry.
doesn't affect anybody, right? Though I mean,
But I think the danger would lie in us coming in, reading these books, and assuming a position of expertise. I think that
totally.
would be
Yeah,
disrespectful. That would be dangerous.
yeah.
Um, I appreciate the viewpoint that I was able to see reading this book. I don't assume that I know everything about what happened. I don't assume I know anything about the the actual situation of being a black man in America, or a black
Hmm.
person in America, or Afro American. Sorry, that's kind of the term I think now. Um,
Well, it's
I
generally African American or Black, as we discussed on our very first episode. Not
not
Negro.
not yeah, not Negro. Yeah, and definitely not the other one.
Definitely not the other one. Yeah,
Have you do you know John Mulaney, the comedian?
I've heard of him. I don't know if I would like. I don't really
Oh
get a
God,
picture of
he's
his.
okay. He's super funny, but there was this one joke that he did where he wanted to talk about midgets on Saturday Night Live,
Yeah.
and I guess the producer was like, "You can't say the word midget on TV," and he's like, "I sure would like to," and and I guess the producer's like, "Saying the word midget is as bad as saying the N word," and he's like, "First of all, no." If you're comparing the badness of two words and you won't even say one of the
Yeah,
words,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
worst word. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that
I've
was
seen that. I
sorry.
don't know if that was the reference, but I have seen that explanation before. That yeah, and there aren't too many words that like you you say the N word. I mean, I guess when you're talking to children, you'll sometimes say like the F word as something you don't say, but
Right.
for the most part,
There's only one N word. There's only
there's
one
only
N
one
word.
N word,
Don't
and
say it.
it's Nutella. B word. Oh, B word. I don't know. Yeah, Dave says he says B word around women, which I would be okay with saying bitch, which I assume the B word is, but C word
It
would be
could
the
be it
nastier
could
one,
be
I think,
like
around women.
unless you're from Australia or you're a character in The Boys.
Well, yeah, I mean, in
Well, I guess he was
I think in
or no, he
England the C word is a lot more acceptable, along with the twat is another common one, which I always love because when I read, we're going to go on a digression about our favorite swear words for some reason. Um, whenever I first read twat, I would always in my head see it as like twat, which it sounds very sort of gentle. But then when you hear British people say it, it's like twat, which I love so much more. Yeah, shout out to the boys. Very, very, very good show. And eager for season 3. Have you been watching the boys, Oren?
I sure have.
You have. That's right. I turned you onto it.
You did. And my
Um,
girlfriend, she likes it too.
cool. Um,
Speaking of which, there's because we're on the second season, right? There's two seasons,
yeah.
or we're like partway through the second, or is the second ended? I can't
The
remember.
last the second is over if you're caught up. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm caught right up to the end of the second, but it's
Yeah.
getting very much white supremacist, which is fucking creepy as shit.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah, that was fucking with me. But anyway,
Yeah, but
we're
that's
we're going
again,
off on a tangent here.
a little bit, yeah, but that is something I think that echoes what's going on in the US right now in the rise of the far far right wing, the alt right, that sort of white power movement. But yeah, we're off on a tangent, not really talking about Malcolm X anymore. Um, so steering it back to the book, I mean, it felt like we ended up kind of screwing things up on our last episode because we did talk a lot about our overall thought about it then, leaving us maybe not a lot to talk about here. Besides, as I said, like my feeling that this needs to be read by more people. I think more people need to open their eyes to these other experiences. And I know for myself, for example, I used to really have a problem, and this isn't related to Malcolm X directly, but it's I can see how some people might struggle with comprehending their, sort of an inherent unconscious racism, because they don't think of themselves as someone who is racist, but they are engaging maybe in behavior that helps propagate racism. And I think the more that we can sort of look at ourselves honestly in the mirror and go, how can I change myself, and how can I be better? If that makes sense. I'm kind of fumbling around there to make my point.
No,
But
no, that makes sense. And I just want to take race off the table here for a second and just say that was very much, I think, Malcolm's perspective on life
mhm,
was, working hard, focused in a direction, and then every once in a while he'd have these, not every once in a while, but fairly consistently, he would have these moments of introspection. Is that the right word?
yeah, I think so.
Is that an actual word? Okay.
It is an actual word.
he,
Yeah, can
he would have
confirm.
these moments of self-reflection, and there was a quote, and I don't have it written down, so I could be I'm just going to paraphrase it. My life has been one of changes, and I think that he was more than the racial aspect of this book. It was a book about a man who found himself in difficult circumstances and always tried to better himself and the people around him.
Hmm.
And that, just the humanity of this book was beautiful, I think. Um, to uh, like to start from him as a child, to go through, the moments of him in Harlem, doing criminal activities, living that kind of, I guess what you would call now maybe thug life,
Hmm.
going to prison, finding himself within the Nation of Islam, and then his falling out or becoming a prominent figure in the Nation of Islam, his falling out with Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. No, was it not the Prophet Muhammad? Sorry,
No,
that was
Muhammad,
ignorant.
Muhammad. What was his name?
Oh God, we should know this. The Honorable
Yeah,
Elijah Muhammad. The
there we go.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
There you got it,
Okay,
boy.
sorry about that.
Fuck it.
And his falling out within the Nation of Islam, his discovery of, I think, the more traditional Islam, and like just the amount of growth of this man,
Hmm.
and then his untimely death.
Hmm.
I mean, what could he have been? It's
Yeah.
really sad to think about that he wasn't. I don't think he ever became the person that he wanted to be. I think that he had a lot of growth left in him,
Hmm.
even though he was a great, like, fantastic, great man, by the end, I think. But I had a point to
Yeah.
that, and I can't remember. I just
Nope.
went on a tangent about, like, I found it on so many levels to be a good read.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna cut you off there because we've got Dave Colemine calling in here. So let's take the
mhm.
call. Hello, Dave. I think
Hello.
you are live.
What's up, guys? Long time listener, first time caller. Really happy to be here.
Hey, thanks for
Loving it.
calling. I don't know if you were
boys.
listening early enough, but we
So-
were chatting you up. We were talking about you being on our Halloween podcast, and also about Mysteries and Madness.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to me or talking that up. I did not. I was coaching my mom through a Skype or through a Zoom call on how to subscribe to a podcast and use a podcast app. It was super enjoyable.
Oh, fun!
No stumbling blocks. No stumbling blocks whatsoever. Went great. I did have a question for you boys. Like, so
For sure.
can you hypothesize a little on where Malcolm's life would have gone? How it may have altered the fabric of time if he hadn't been killed? What do you think would have? Where would his life have gone?
I mean, obviously, that is an absolutely unknowable question, but in my mind, one of the things that he was pushing for, it seems, towards the end of his life, was for Black Americans to take a case to the United Nations about, a lack of human rights, a historical lack of human rights for the Black people of America. And I suspect, my guess is that he would have continued pushing in that direction and encouraging in that direction, and maybe would have seen something like that happen. That's my thought.
I
Oren, do you have any?
appreciate that. That's cool, man. I've appreciated what you guys said on your podcast as well. I've enjoyed this whole thing.
Cool, thank you. Do you have any thoughts on where Malcolm might have gone in future years, Oren?
I
think Oren's having some connection
I'm on
difficulties.
LTE now. Yeah, my internet just crapped out. I'm on data now. Hopefully, I got enough.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And like Todd said, I don't think we know, but I definitely, like, if I let my brain wander for a minute, I'll come back to you on that one. If you guys want to, I'll have a minute to think about that if you don't mind.
Sure. While you're thinking about that, why don't you, Dave, tease a little bit about the Battle Royale podcast coming up in a few weeks. Tell us what your experience was like joining us and what people can expect on that episode.
Yeah, the episode is airing. What is it? Is it Halloween night? Halloween day?
Yeah, it'll be out on the day of October 31st.
The day of October 31st, the Battle Royale podcast comes out. I was just so privileged to get to be a part of your whole experience and get to see a really great movie. I quite enjoyed Battle Royale. Excuse me. It's this subtitled film that basically sets up and creates the Battle Royale video game genre. And but it was a bit banned because I think it's student on student violence. It kind of reminds me of Hunger Games. And just the whole podcast experience with the two of you guys, we had a lot of laughs. I had a lot of fun getting to be a part of the whole thing. It was such a privilege, and to both chat to you guys and to catch a cool film and get to chat about it. I'm looking forward to listening to it.
Sweet. Yeah, it was fun doing it with you. Glad you could come on.
Definitely, boys. Well, thanks for letting me be a part of your call.
All right. Cheers. Take care.
Peace.
So do you have any thoughts on where Malcolm, and I totally understand if that's not something you want to talk about, because it is unknowable. There's no way to know. And as we were talking before about privilege, again, two normal, like, privileged white guys talking about where this black activist might have gone in his life seems like a ridiculous thing to do. But
you know what? When I was letting my brain wander there, the only place I could go, because I got so attached to this character, this man, through this book, was his personal life. I felt like he was better understanding his place in his family, his love for his wife. I feel like that's where his growth was kind of headed. I think that he always had an interesting and very thoughtful perspective on things. And I think that he would have just continued to influence people. and make people think.
Mhm.
And you know, I don't think that this is just like from my perspective. I don't think that a race war ever would have came from
No.
him. I think that he was definitely stepping away from that kind of not that that was his plan, right?
Yeah.
But he was always, I think that in a lot of ways he was expected it.
Yeah.
I just, he was getting older. He was in love. He had a family. I think I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah. Um, in regards to the race war, actually, there was one section of the book, um, and and Dave said apologies for the odd question. It was not at all an odd question, especially because I think, especially on the last episode that we recorded, we did talk a little bit about, what could have happened and what, trying to imagine what life would be like without him, because he was such a dynamic force in history. And um, it I do think society definitely suffered a loss when he died, and would have gone in an entirely different well, to a certain extent, a different direction if he'd survived. But in regards to like the race war discussion and calling for violence, there was a section of the book I wanted to read, which was kind of related to why it had been banned, why I think it might have been banned, and it is that those calls to violence, and it is from the last chapter of the book. So it is still sort of one of his final words, where he is still advocating for a certain extent of violence, and it is this here. I'm going to read. They called me the angriest Negro in America. I wouldn't deny that charge. I spoke exactly as I felt. I believe in anger. The Bible says there is a time for anger. They called me a teacher, a fomenter of violence. I would say point blank, that is a lie. I'm not for wanton violence. I'm for justice. I feel that if white people were attacked by Negroes, if the forces of law prove unable or inadequate or reluctant to protect those whites from those Negroes, then those white people should protect and defend themselves from those Negroes using arms if necessary. And I feel that when the law fails to protect Negroes from whites' attack, then those Negroes should use arms if necessary to defend themselves. And that sounds reasonable,
Mm-hmm.
because he's balancing it. But I think, given the systemic racism in America then and now, there's something underlying those words where the knowledge is that when Negroes are attacking the whites, those whites are going to be protected by the forces of law. And when the whites are attacking the Negroes, that is less guaranteed. And it makes it seem more likely that that violence will happen. And I even think about that statement in regards to the Black Lives Matter protests of today, of how, those are coming from the fact that not only are blacks not being protected by the police, they're not being protected from the police, who are, killing them at rates much higher than, other races. So this notion that
And that's
people should
extra.
be.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. No, it's fine.
I was going to say, when you look at the percentage difference between uh, blacks killed by police and others killed by police, and then you also look at
Look at the
the
population.
population disparity.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's like the
It's like 3
difference
to 4
is
times.
astronomical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say.
So yeah, I mean, I think that call for violence, even if maybe fair in the way it's argued, does come with a certain fear for white society, that if people actually listen to that message, that we would be seeing a lot more violence from Black people, I think.
But only, and the way that he's describing it, people are going to follow his words only if they are in danger. So if they
Yeah.
are being attacked, if their lives are threatened.
Yeah.
So I mean, the average white person, if you're not going to physically harm or physically endanger someone of a different race, then what are you concerned about?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that everybody has the right to protect themselves.
Yeah, totally. But as
And knowing that Malcolm's father was killed by, I think, Klansmen, right?
mhm. Well, I think like he officially killed himself by laying in front of the train tracks, but yeah.
Which, yeah, fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave, violence does beget violence. That's the problem. Unfortunately, peace doesn't always beget peace. I guess I've said all I have to say. Do you have any final thoughts on the autobiography of Malcolm X before we close the book on this book?
Uh, read it if you haven't. It's 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 great on it was a great read on a lot of levels, on the racial aspect, the political aspect, religious aspect, and just the personal aspect. Um, Being invited into this man's story,
Mm-hmm.
very candidly as well, and I think that Alex Haley did a great job of, um, because I know from the epilogue, now that I know to read epilogues. I know from the epilogue that sometime it's at some points extracting information from Malcolm wasn't the easiest task.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, what could he have been if he didn't have to fight for the rights of his race?
Mm-hmm.
A very intelligent man, a man capable of growth, a man capable of abstract thought and
Mm-hmm.
charismatic.
Although I think too, what's interesting is he's someone I think that was defined a lot by his struggles, and I don't know, like if he hadn't had to have struggled through all of that, as unfortunate as it was, I don't know if he would have turned out, as powerful a figure.
He might not have been as powerful a figure, but I think he would have been just a good person.
Yeah, probably.
If he was,
Probably
if
would
he
have made a
became a
good
lawyer.
lawyer if his teacher.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was going to
That's what
say,
I was
yeah.
going to say.
I mean, he might not have gone down in the history books, but I think that probably would have been a better outcome if he would have had a chance to just be the person
Yeah,
he wanted to be.
exactly.
If he didn't need to take on that position of political leader, of social leader.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he particularly enjoyed the need for that. I think that what he wanted was for his people to have the ability to be themselves
Mm-hmm.
and not be defined by racial disparity.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, anyone who has
And
to
I
fight
think,
for any sort of rights obviously wishes that that fight wasn't necessary and that the rights were already there.
mhm. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Final thoughts. Read it if you hadn't. Um, I know that we covered as much as we could, but there's so much
Oh
more
yeah,
that
but that's
we
yeah,
didn't even touch on. And yeah, do yourselves a favor. Read it.
yeah.
Read a fucking book.
So yeah, thanks for taking the time to come and listen to our very first live broadcast. I can't believe we made it here. We did it mostly without any hiccups and hangups. If you are looking to get in touch with us, you can email us at bandthingshappen@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. Facebook is where we get most of our information out to our listeners. It's facebook.com/band things happen. Band things happen.
We also have a Discord.
And we also have a Discord. The link is kind of crazy, crazy random characters. The easiest way to find the link to the Discord is on the Facebook page. It is our pinned Facebook post. What? You just said, oh. Lauren?
Oh, I think it was my internet crapping out again.
Okay. And then lastly, we now have our Patreon set up. So if you want to support this show, or there's another show that I'm doing with a friend called Half Cut Conspiracies, which involves sitting down, drinking beer, and talking about conspiracy theories. You can support this show or that one at patreon.com/blah blah blah media. That's BLAH media. We have support tiers all the way from $2 to $500 if you want to be our sugar daddy.
You don't have a $500. We don't have a $500 one.
Dude, I sent you the link to proofread yesterday. I guess you didn't look at it.
No. The link you sent me yesterday, $20 was the max.
No, then you. Well, anyway, the $500 here is mostly there as a joke, but it's also there if somebody happens to have a bunch of money kicking around they don't know what to do with. I'm not going to say no if someone wants to throw us $500 a month. But go check out those tiers. At this point,
and
I think we've got enough. Admittedly, we don't have a lot of listeners. Like, we get about 15 listeners on average for each episode. So, but if every one of those listeners, or even 2/3 of those listeners, joined us at the $2 tier, that would cover our server costs for this podcast. So that'd be brilliant if people wanted to jump in and send us some love, buy us coffee, buy us a beer. We appreciate your support. Like I said, we appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us today. Any final thoughts from you before we sign off here, Oren?
I mean, I gave my final thoughts on the book.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to throw that back at you.
Well, I'm not talking final thoughts on the book, just final thoughts on life, the podcast, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I know we got a Patreon, but honestly, we're just happy to have listeners. So.
Oh yeah, totally. We're not trying to guilt you into sending us money unless you want to. It's all good.
It's been a great journey so far. I'm looking forward to the next stage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have it already, get yourselves a copy of The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, it's actually worth.
Is there a way that we can share the chapter breakdown per episode so that if people want to read along with us and then listen to the chapters that they've read? Can we do that?
Yes, I was thinking I would do that on Facebook. Facebook would probably be the easiest way to talk about which chapters we're reading for each episode. And we can say it here too, like if people are listening and they want to read along, we are covering chapters 1 through 17 on the first episode. So if you want to read along, those are the chapters to check out.
They're very short chapters.
They are very short chapters.
Yeah. So 1 through 17 sounds like a lot, but I think like chapters are average like what, 10 pages? Not even?
They're less than that, at least on my e-reader. They're sort of between 5 and 8 pages for the most part, whereas the Malcolm X was between 20 and 30 pages per chapter. So on that one, we were covering like 4 or 5 chapters per episode, and here we're covering 17. So they're basically.
I think we're covering like half as many pages too this time.
2/3. I think we were covering about 150 pages before, and now we're looking at around 100 pages per episode. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we're done. Until next time.
Well, we do have a third person live here. We've got Dermo. I'm not sure if they wanted to call in. I'd like to give them an option.
Sure. Dermo or Dermot, if you wanted to call in and chat before we sign off, I don't know if you are a regular listener or if you've just stumbled upon this podcast in your daily truck, but if you wanted to call in or say something in the chat, you're welcome to. Want to play the Jeopardy theme?
Do, 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 do.
That's probably, maybe that's a little, being singled out like that as somebody who just came in to listen. Like, you call
No.
in now.
I just wanted to give them the option. Like, I don't know if they're sitting there thinking like, oh man, I really want to call in, but I don't want to just interrupt them. They're at the end of their podcast.
Well, and that's something I was thinking about earlier on before Dave called, when I was wondering if Dave was going to call in. I thought when we're about, at about 45 minutes runtime, I was thinking of saying, we're open to calls now if somebody wanted to call and chat. Maybe we'll.
I think we're just always open to calls. I think.
I think on the live one, yeah. But I think if we do find ourselves at 45 minutes in and no one's called, it's probably a good idea to like verbally say that, hey, we're open to calls now if you want to call in, blah, 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 blah. And do that kind of encouragement without like pointing at someone specifically and say, you
sorry, yeah.
call in now.
No. I'm not trying to put pressure on anybody. I just thought I'd give before we signed off. I didn't want to quit the podcast without giving them the option.
Yeah, then we get a cranky review that is like, well, I wanted to call in, but then they just stopped broadcasting.
Or I didn't want to call in, and they just kept bugging me about it.
Yeah, leave me alone. I just want to listen.
Too much pressure. Much pressure.
Stop calling me out by name.
Dave, I love you, bud. Thanks for calling in, and yeah.
Oh, now we got Dave calling in.
I'm good. Oh, he's calling in again?
Dave's calling in now, yeah.
Okay.
Dave, you're live once again.
Yes, a long-time listener, first-time perspirer. Happy to be here. Thank you guys for doing what you do. Really enjoying the whole thing. I think I'm the third live person. I think it's me. I love it. I love you guys. I've enjoyed the whole thing.
Glad you could be here, man.
Okay, peace out, boys.
Cheers.
Peace. All
right. Then I think that's
I've got
the
outro music queued whenever you're ready, bud.
All right. I'm Todd Sullivan.
And I am Oren Barger.
And as always, go read a fucking book.